they endorsed. In 2004, these issues came up before the highest judicial body in the world. So far, I've talked about the most representative political body in the world and the main regional bodies. But then there is the issue of the main judicial body in the world, the International Court of Justice. And the story goes something like this. Israel, as most of you know, is building a wall in the West Bank. And the United Nations General Assembly, it put a question to the International Court of Justice. And the question was this: can you tell us what are the legal implications and consequences of the wall that Israel is building in the West Bank? The International Court of Justice deliberated on this question, and as most of you probably know, they decided the wall was illegal, and the wall had to be dismantled, and Israel had to pay compensation for the damages due to the wall. But that was actually the least significant aspect of the International Court of Justice advisory opinion. Because before the court could decide whether or not the wall was illegal, they had to decide prior legal questions. So, for example, as we all know, any state has the right to build a wall along its own border. Just like anyone in this room, if you own a private house, you have the right to build a fence along the border of your property. Obviously, as a homeowner, you don't have any right to build a fence that goes around your neighbor's swimming pool and living room. That's just a fence that's gone too far. And so the International Court of Justice had to decide where are Israel's borders? If the wall is being built along its border, Israel has the right. If the wall is being built on somebody else's property, Israel obviously does not have the right. So the first order of business for the court was to decide what are Israel's borders before they could decide if the wall was legal or not. Number two, this was a very strange wall that Israel was building. Israel said, we're building a wall to protect ourselves from terrorists. But the wall took this winding path that went around its settlements. Now, the court had to decide, are the settlements legal under international law? If they're legal, of course Israel has the right to build a wall around its settlements. But if the settlements are illegal, then Israel has no right. And the reason it has no right is because of this principle in law. It's a fancy Latin term, and I don't have Mr. Marx's command of Latin, so I'll use the English translation. The term is, you can't get a right from a wrong. You can't get a right from a wrong. I know this woman here, she can't quite understand what that means. All it means is this: if the settlements are wrong to begin with, then you can't have a right to protect them. You can have a right to pack up your bags and leave, but you don't have a right to protect something which in the first place is wrong. If it's illegal to begin with, then you don't have a right to protect it. So, the court had to decide, are these settlements legal? And number three, the wall happens to cut right through East Jerusalem, so that Israel keeps lots and lots of Jews on their side of the wall, and as few Arabs as they can. And on the other side of the wall, they put lots and lots of Arabs. And so the court had to decide, to whom does East Jerusalem belong? If East Jerusalem belongs to Israel, of course it has the right to build a wall in East Jerusalem. But if it belongs to the Palestinians, obviously they have no right. So what happens? The court deliberates, it hears evidence, and it reaches the following conclusion. It's illegal to acquire territory by war, so Israel has no right to any of the West Bank or any of Gaza. And Israel and the court calls all of the West Bank and all of Gaza, they call it occupied Palestinian territory. And the abbreviation is OPT. So if you look at human rights reports, they often refer to OPT, occupied Palestinian territory. They are using the phrases, the terms of the International Court of Justice. Number two, the court says, of course the settlements are illegal, because under Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, it's illegal for an occupying power to transfer its population to occupied territory. Israel is the occupying power. It's transferring Jews to the West Bank, previously also to Gaza. That's clearly in violation of the Geneva Convention. The settlements are illegal. Number three, East Jerusalem. Well, the court says East Jerusalem was acquired exactly the same way as the West Bank and Gaza. East Jerusalem, and the court is very clear, is occupied Palestinian territory. So, on three of the four controversial questions, the court decides. But now, again, you have to bring to bear your computational skills, your arithmetic ability, and judge for yourself, was it controversial? The vote in the court was 14-1. 14-1. The only negative vote was cast by the American, Thomas Bergenthal. And even Mr. Bergenthal said in his statement, he said, I agree with a lot of what the majority said. And then he made a very crucial statement. Because as everyone understands, the whole issue are those settlements. If Israel can't build settlements, well, it doesn't want the West Bank for its scenic value. It wants it for its water, for its agricultural, fertile agricultural soil. So the key question is the settlements. And Mr. Bergenthal says, on the question of the settlements, paragraph 6 of Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention does not admit for exception on grounds of military or security interests. I agree that this provision applies to the Israeli settlements in the West Bank. All 15 judges agree. And the reason is fairly obvious. The reason is because on these particular issues, inadmissibility of acquiring territory by war, transferring populations to occupied territory, these are